Life is not a series of victories punctuated by occasional defeats. Rather, it is a continuous dance between triumph and setback, success and failure, progress and regression. The ancient Stoics understood this fundamental truth better than perhaps any philosophical school before or since. They developed a comprehensive framework not just for enduring adversity, but for transforming it into the very fuel of personal growth and achievement. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the impediment to action advances action, what stands in the way becomes the way, he was articulating a revolutionary concept that challenges our modern understanding of success and failure. This principle, known today as the obstacle as the way, forms a cornerstone of Stoic resilience philosophy. The greatest leaders, innovators, and achievers throughout history have intuitively understood what the Stoics taught explicitly. Setbacks are not the opposite of success. They are the pathway to it. Every failure contains within it the seeds of future triumph, but only for those who possess the wisdom and mental discipline to extract those seeds and plant them properly. This comprehensive guide will take you through the essential Stoic strategies that can transform any setback into a comeback. We'll explore not just the theoretical foundations, but the practical, actionable techniques that you can implement immediately in your own life. Whether you're facing professional disappointment, personal loss, financial hardship, or any other form of adversity, these time-tested principles will provide you with the mental tools necessary not just to survive, but to thrive. The Stoics believed that our responses to external events determine our character and our destiny far more than the events themselves. This perspective shift alone can be revolutionary. When we stop seeing ourselves as victims of circumstance and start seeing ourselves as architects of our response, we reclaim our power and open the door to transformation. Chapter 1. The Dichotomy of Control, the Foundation of Stoic Resilience. The single most important concept in Stoic philosophy is the dichotomy of control, first articulated by Epictetus in his Enchiridion. This principle states that some things are within our control, while others are not. What's within our control includes our judgments, our decisions, our actions, and our responses. What's outside our control includes other people's actions, natural disasters, economic conditions, and the countless external circumstances that life throws our way. Most people spend their lives fighting against things they cannot control while neglecting the things they can. This misdirection of energy is the primary source of human suffering, and the reason why many people remain stuck in cycles of frustration and defeat. The Stoics teach us to reverse this pattern completely. When a setback occurs, the first question a Stoic asks is not, "Why did this happen to me?" or "How can I make this go away?" Instead, they ask, "What aspects of this situation can I control? And how can I respond in a way that serves my highest good?" This shift in questioning immediately moves us from a position of powerlessness to one of agency. Consider a professional setback, such as being passed over for a promotion you deserved. The traditional response might involve resentment toward your boss, anger at the unfairness of the decision, or despair about your career prospects. The Stoic response involves a systematic analysis. What can I control in this situation? I can control my response to the news, my commitment to improving my skills, my networking effort, my attitude toward my work, and my decision about whether to stay with the company or seek opportunities elsewhere. This doesn't mean accepting injustice or becoming passive. Rather, it means channeling your energy toward actions that can actually create positive change rather than wasting it on emotions and reactions that only serve to diminish your power. The dichotomy of control becomes particularly powerful when combined with the Stoic practice of negative visualization. By regularly contemplating potential setbacks and losses before they occur, we build mental resilience and reduce the emotional impact when challenges actually arise. This preparation doesn't make us pessimistic. It makes us anti-fragile, capable of growing stronger under stress. Marcus Aurelius practiced this principle during some of the most challenging periods in Roman history. Despite facing plagues, wars, and political turmoil, he maintained his focus on what he could control: his own thoughts, decisions, and actions as emperor. His meditations reveal a man who consistently returned to this fundamental principle whenever external circumstances threatened to overwhelm him. The practical application of the dichotomy of control involves creating what we might call control lists. When facing any setback, write down everything about the situation that concerns you. Then separate these items into two columns: what I can control and what I cannot control. Spend your time, energy, and emotional resources exclusively on the first column, while accepting the second column with equanimity. This practice alone can transform your relationship with adversity. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of your challenges, you'll develop laser focus on the specific actions you can take to improve your situation. This focused action, sustained over time, is what turns setbacks into comebacks. Chapter 2. Reframing Adversity. The Stoic Art of Perspective. The Stoics understood that events themselves are neutral. It's our interpretation of these events that creates either suffering or growth. This insight forms the basis of cognitive reframing, a technique that allows us to transform the meaning of any setback and extract maximum value from difficult experiences. Seneca, one of the most practical of the Stoic philosophers, frequently wrote about how apparent disasters often prove to be blessings in disguise. He observed that wealth could make men soft and complacent, while poverty could sharpen their focus and strengthen their character. Health could lead to recklessness, while illness could teach valuable lessons about what truly matters in life. This perspective doesn't minimize the real pain and difficulty of setbacks. Instead, it provides a framework for extracting maximum learning and growth from these experiences. When we can see our setbacks as essential parts of our development rather than unfortunate interruptions to our progress, we begin to approach them with curiosity rather than resistance. The key to effective reframing lies in asking better questions. Instead of asking, "Why me?" or "What I do to deserve this?" the Stoic asks questions like, "What can this experience teach me? How might this setback be redirecting me toward a better path? What strengths is this challenge helping me develop? How can I use this experience to help others who face similar difficulties?" Consider the story of James Stockdale, a U.S. Navy vice admiral who was shot down over Vietnam and spent 7 years as a prisoner of war. Stockdale later credited his survival to Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Epictetus. Rather than viewing his imprisonment as pure suffering, he reframed it as an opportunity to test and strengthen his character. He emerged from the experience not as a broken man, but as someone whose resilience and leadership abilities had been forged in the crucible of extreme adversity. The reframing process involves several specific techniques. First is a practice of obstacle perception, training yourself to see obstacles as opportunities for growth rather than barriers to success. Every setback becomes a chance to develop new skills, deepen your resilience, or discover alternative paths you never would have considered otherwise. Second is the technique of benefit finding, actively searching for the positive aspects or potential benefits within any negative situation. This isn't about forced optimism or denial of real problems. It's about recognizing that even genuinely difficult situations often contain hidden opportunities or lessons that can prove invaluable in the long run. Third is the practice of temporal reframing, considering how your current setback might look from the perspective of your future self. Often what seems like a catastrophe in the moment becomes a pivotal turning point when viewed from the vantage point of years or decades later. Many successful people can point to specific failures or setbacks that, while painful at the time, ultimately led them to much better outcomes than they originally expected. The Stoics also practiced what we might call role reframing, viewing setbacks not as things that happen to you, but as challenges that test your character and provide opportunities to embody your highest values. When you're facing a difficult situation, ask yourself, how can I respond to this in a way that reflects the person I want to become? This shift from victim to protagonist fundamentally changes how you experience and respond to adversity. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced perspective-taking exercises, imagining how his current troubles would appear from the viewpoint of future generations or from the perspective of the universe itself. This cosmic perspective helped to maintain equanimity even during the most challenging periods of his reign. When we zoom out far enough, many of our setbacks reveal themselves to be temporary blips in the larger story of our lives. Chapter 3. The Discipline of Desire, Mastering Expectations and Attachments. One of the primary sources of suffering during setbacks is the gap between our expectations and reality. The Stoics developed sophisticated practices for managing this gap through what they called the discipline of desire. learning to want what happens rather than demanding that what we want must happen. This principle doesn't advocate for passive acceptance or the abandonment of goals. Instead, it teaches us to hold our preferences lightly while remaining fully committed to our efforts. The Stoic approach is to prefer certain outcomes while being prepared to find value and opportunity in whatever actually occurs. Epictetus taught his students to approach every situation with the mindset of, I want this to happen. But if it doesn't, I'll make the best of what does happen. This attitude creates what modern psychologists call anti-fragility, the ability to actually benefit from stress and disorder rather than merely surviving them. The discipline of desire involves several key practices. First is the technique of preferred indifference, recognizing that while some outcomes are naturally preferable to others, health over sickness, success over failure, our happiness and character development don't depend entirely on which outcomes we experience. A Stoic prefers to be healthy but knows they can live well and maintain their virtue even if illness strikes. Second is the practice of reserve clause, adding a mental footnote to all our plans and expectations, fate permitting, or if the gods will it. This simple addition helps us maintain psychological flexibility when our plans don't unfold as expected. Instead of experiencing devastating disappointment when reality diverges from our expectations, we can more easily adapt and find new paths forward. The ancient Stoics understood that attachment to specific outcomes often blinds us to better alternatives that might be available. When we're completely fixated on one particular vision of success, we might miss opportunities that could lead to even better results. The discipline of desire keeps us open to these alternative possibilities. Consider an entrepreneur whose startup fails after years of effort. A person attached to that specific vision of success might see only catastrophic failure. A person practicing the discipline of desire might see valuable experience, lessons about market dynamics, networks of contacts, and skills that could be applied to future ventures. The failure of one particular business doesn't negate the value created through the process of building it. The discipline of desire also involves understanding the difference between outcomes and processes. While we cannot control outcomes completely, we can control our processes, our effort, preparation, decision-making, and responses to changing circumstances. The Stoic focuses primarily on process excellence while remaining open to whatever outcomes emerge from that excellent process. This approach paradoxically often leads to better outcomes than attachment-based approaches. When we're not desperately attached to specific results, we often make better decisions, take appropriate risks, and remain flexible enough to capitalize on unexpected opportunities. The discipline of desire frees us from the anxiety and tunnel vision that attachment creates. Seneca practiced this principle in his relationship with material wealth. Despite being one of the richest men in Rome, he regularly practiced voluntary poverty, spending days living as if he had lost everything. This practice helped him hold his wealth lightly and prepared him psychologically for the possibility of real loss. When political circumstances eventually threatened his position and resources, he was able to maintain his equanimity because he had already practiced letting go. The modern application of the discipline of desire might involve practices like gratitude meditation, regularly appreciating what you currently have rather than focusing exclusively on what you lack. It might involve scenario planning, considering multiple possible outcomes for important situations and finding ways to create value regardless of which scenario unfolds. Another powerful technique is negative visualization, occasionally imagining the loss of things you currently take for granted. This practice isn't morbid or pessimistic. It's designed to help you appreciate what you have while building resilience for potential changes. When you've mentally rehearsed various forms of loss, you're less likely to be devastated if they actually occur. Chapter 4. Present Moment Awareness. The Power of Now in Stoic Practice. While the Stoics are often associated with planning and foresight, they also emphasize the critical importance of present moment awareness. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that the present moment is the only time we actually have control over our thoughts and actions. The past is beyond our reach and the future remains uncertain. But the present moment offers us the opportunity to embody our values and make progress toward our goals. This focus on the present becomes especially important when dealing with setbacks. Our minds have a tendency to amplify suffering by ruminating about past mistakes or catastrophizing about future consequences. The Stoic practice of present moment awareness cuts through this mental noise and allows us to focus on what we can actually do right now to improve our situation. The key insight is that most setbacks seem overwhelming when we view them as permanent, pervasive problems that we must solve all at once. However, when we break them down into present moment actions we could take, they become much more manageable. Instead of trying to solve the entire problem immediately, we focus on the next right step, then the step after that, building momentum through consistent present moment action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." This wasn't advice to ignore the future or fail to learn from the past, but rather a reminder that our actual power exists only in the current moment. When facing setbacks, this present moment focus prevents us from becoming paralyzed by the magnitude of our challenges or overwhelmed by regret and anxiety. Present moment awareness also helps us recognize opportunities that might be invisible when we're caught up in mental stories about our setbacks. Often, the solution to our problems exists in our current environment, but we miss it because we're mentally living in the past or future. By anchoring our attention in the present, we become more capable of seeing and acting on available opportunities. The practice involves several specific techniques. First is what the Stoics call morning reflection, beginning each day by focusing on what you can accomplish today rather than becoming overwhelmed by long-term challenges. This daily focus creates a sense of progress and momentum even during difficult periods. Second is the technique of hourly awareness, periodically throughout the day, pausing to ask yourself, what is the most important thing I can do right now? This practice prevents you from getting lost in worry or distraction and keeps you focused on productive action. Third is the practice of evening review, ending each day by reflecting on what you accomplished, what you learned, and how you can improve tomorrow. This review helps you extract maximum value from each day's experiences while preparing mentally for the next day's challenges. Present moment awareness is particularly powerful during crises because it prevents the kind of mental time travel that amplifies stress and anxiety. When you're fully present, you're dealing only with what's actually happening right now, not with all the imaginary future scenarios your mind might create. This reduces the emotional intensity of setbacks and allows you to think more clearly about solutions. The Stoics also understood that present moment awareness enhances our ability to notice and appreciate small victories and positive developments that might otherwise go unrecognized. During setbacks, these small positive elements can provide crucial psychological fuel for continuing efforts toward recovery and growth. Epictetus taught his students to treat each moment as a complete experience rather than just a stepping stone to some future goal. This perspective helps us find meaning and satisfaction in the process of working through challenges, rather than postponing all satisfaction until we reach some future resolution. Chapter 5. Virtue as the ultimate goal, character development through adversity. The Stoics believed that the development of virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance was the only true good and the ultimate goal of human life. This belief system provides a powerful framework for turning setbacks into comebacks because it means that every challenging situation becomes an opportunity to strengthen your character and move closer to your highest potential as a human being. When your primary goal is virtue development rather than external achievement, setbacks cannot truly defeat you. They can only provide you with new opportunities to practice wisdom in the face of uncertainty, justice in your dealings with others, courage in the face of fear, and temperance in managing your desires and emotions. From this perspective, a life without challenges would actually be impoverished, offering fewer opportunities for character development. This doesn't mean that external goals don't matter or that we should be indifferent to practical outcomes. Rather, it means that we pursue external goals as opportunities to practice virtue rather than as ends in themselves. The Stoic entrepreneur doesn't start a business primarily to make money, but to practice virtues like courage, wisdom, and justice in the context of building something valuable for society. If the business fails, the virtue practiced in building it remains as a permanent gain. Wisdom, the first of the cardinal virtues, involves developing better judgment, learning from experience, and making decisions based on sound principles rather than emotional impulses. Every setback provides rich material for developing wisdom. Failed projects teach us about planning and execution. Difficult relationships teach us about human nature and communication. Financial struggles teach us about resource management and priority setting. Justice involves treating others fairly and contributing to the common good. Setbacks often provide opportunities to practice justice by considering how our actions affect others, taking responsibility for our mistakes, and finding ways to create value even during difficult circumstances. A person facing unemployment might discover opportunities to help others in similar situations, turning their personal challenge into a source of service to their community. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear, but the willingness to do what's right despite fear. Setbacks inevitably involve fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of loss. Each time we act courageously despite these fears, we strengthen our capacity for future courageous action. The muscle of courage, like physical muscles, grows stronger through use. Temperance involves self-control and moderation in our desires and reactions. Setbacks test our temperance by triggering strong emotional reactions and impulses toward destructive behaviors. Each time we respond to adversity with measured, thoughtful action rather than reactive emotion, we strengthen our capacity for wise response in future situations. The virtue-focused approach transforms the entire experience of setbacks. Instead of seeing them as unfortunate interruptions to our progress, we see them as essential training opportunities. A boxer doesn't resent the heavy bag for providing resistance. They understand that the resistance is what builds their strength. Similarly, the Stoic doesn't resent life's challenges, but recognizes them as the resistance training of character development. This perspective also provides a sense of meaningful progress even during the most difficult times. When external circumstances are chaotic and progress toward external goals seems impossible, you can still make progress in developing wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. This internal progress is permanent and can never be taken away by external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this approach during his reign as emperor. Despite facing enormous external challenges, plagues, wars, political turmoil, he consistently focused on how these challenges could help him become a better person and a better leader. His meditations reveal a man who used every difficulty as raw material for character development. The practical application involves reframing every setback in terms of virtue development opportunities. When facing a professional challenge, ask yourself, how can this situation help me develop wisdom about my industry or my leadership abilities? How can I practice justice in my treatment of colleagues and stakeholders? How can I demonstrate courage in making difficult decisions? How can I practice temperance in managing my reactions and desires? This virtue-focused approach also helps maintain motivation during long, difficult recovery processes. External results may take time to manifest, but character development happens immediately every time you choose the virtuous response over the easy response. This creates a sense of continuous progress and achievement even during objectively challenging periods. Chapter 6. The Inner Citadel. Building Unshakable Mental Resilience. The concept of the inner citadel represents one of the most powerful aspects of Stoic philosophy. The idea that we can develop an inner fortress of mental strength that remains unshakable regardless of external circumstances. This inner citadel is built through the consistent practice of Stoic principles and becomes our ultimate refuge during times of adversity. The inner citadel isn't about emotional numbness or indifference to external events. Rather, it's about developing such strong internal resources that external setbacks, while still challenging and sometimes painful, cannot fundamentally destabilize your sense of self, your commitment to your values, or your capacity for effective action. Building this inner citadel requires consistent practice of several key elements. First is the development of philosophical clarity about what truly matters. When you have deep conviction about your core values and principles, temporary setbacks cannot shake your fundamental sense of purpose and direction. You might need to adjust your tactics, but your strategic direction remains clear. Second is the cultivation of emotional resilience through regular mental training. Just as physical fitness requires consistent exercise, mental resilience requires consistent practice. This includes daily reflection, regular examination of your thoughts and reactions, and conscious practice of Stoic principles in small, everyday situations so that they become automatic responses during major crises. Third is the development of self-reliance, not in terms of isolation from others, but in terms of not depending entirely on external validation or circumstances for your sense of worth and capability. The person with a strong inner citadel values relationships and external success, but doesn't require them for psychological stability. The inner citadel also involves what the Stoics called reserve, maintaining psychological and emotional resources in reserve so that you're not operating at maximum capacity during normal times. This reserve provides the extra strength needed during crisis periods. People who use all their mental and emotional energy during good times often have nothing left when setbacks occur. Seneca exemplified this principle in his approach to wealth and political power. Despite his success and influence, he maintained philosophical practices that kept him prepared for potential loss. When political circumstances eventually threatened his position, he was able to face exile and even death with equanimity because his inner citadel had been built through years of preparation. The inner citadel is also strengthened through the practice of strategic pessimism, not negative thinking, but realistic preparation for potential difficulties. This involves thinking through potential setbacks before they occur and developing response strategies. This preparation reduces the psychological shock of adversity and allows for more effective responses when challenges actually arise. Another component is the development of what modern psychology calls cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt your thinking and strategies when circumstances change. Rigid thinking patterns make us brittle and more likely to break under pressure. Flexible thinking patterns make us resilient and capable of finding new solutions when old approaches no longer work. The inner citadel also includes a strong sense of personal agency, the deep conviction that, regardless of external circumstances, you always have choices about how to respond. This sense of agency prevents the psychological paralysis that often accompanies major setbacks. Even when your options are limited, you maintain awareness of the choices that remain available. Perhaps most importantly, the inner citadel includes a sense of meaning and purpose that transcends immediate circumstances. When your life has deep meaning connected to values larger than immediate gratification or success, temporary setbacks cannot destroy your sense of purpose. They might redirect your path, but they cannot eliminate your fundamental reason for living. The practical development of the inner citadel involves daily practices that strengthen these various components. Morning reflection helps clarify priorities and intentions. Evening review helps extract lessons from the day's experiences. Regular study of Stoic texts provides philosophical reinforcement of key principles. Physical exercise and healthy habits provide the physiological foundation for mental resilience. The inner citadel is tested during setbacks but built during ordinary times. The person who waits until crisis strikes to begin developing mental resilience is like someone who waits until fire breaks out to install smoke detectors. The time to build your inner citadel is now, during periods of relative stability, so that it's available when you need it most. Chapter 7. Action over Emotion. The Stoic Response System. One of the most practical aspects of Stoic philosophy is its emphasis on action over emotion as the primary response to setbacks. While emotions are natural and provide important information, the Stoics understood that prolonged emotional reactions rarely solve problems and often make situations worse. The key is to feel emotions without being controlled by them. Then channel your energy into constructive action. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. The Stoics acknowledged that initial emotional reactions to setbacks are natural and often unavoidable. The key distinction is between the initial emotion and our choice about how long to maintain that emotional state and what actions to take while experiencing it. The Stoic response system involves a specific sequence. First, acknowledge the emotion without judgment. Second, examine the thoughts and assumptions underlying the emotion. Third, determine what actions are available that could improve the situation. Fourth, take those actions while allowing the emotion to exist without controlling your behavior. This approach recognizes that emotions often contain valuable information. Fear might alert you to genuine dangers that require preparation. Anger might highlight injustices that need to be addressed. Sadness might indicate losses that deserve grieving. The key is to extract the information without becoming trapped in the emotional state. Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote about the tendency of emotions to cloud judgment and lead to poor decisions. He developed practices for stepping back from emotional reactions and asking practical questions. What can I do about this situation? What would be the most helpful response? How can I address this challenge in a way that reflects my values? The action over emotion principle becomes especially important during the early stages of setbacks, when emotions are typically most intense. During these periods, the temptation is often to make major decisions based on emotional states rather than careful analysis. The Stoic approach involves taking time to process emotions while focusing primarily on immediate practical actions that can stabilize the situation. For example, if you lose your job, the initial emotions might include shock, anger, fear, and disappointment. The Stoic approach would involve acknowledging these emotions while quickly moving to practical actions. Updating your resume, reaching out to your network, researching job opportunities, managing your finances during the transition, and perhaps using the time to develop new skills or explore different career directions. This action-focused approach serves several purposes. First, it prevents you from becoming stuck in rumination and negative thought cycles that rarely lead to solutions. Second, it creates momentum and a sense of agency during periods when you might otherwise feel powerless. Third, it often leads to opportunities and solutions that wouldn't be visible if you remained focused primarily on the emotional aspects of the setback. The Stoics also understood that action itself can be therapeutic. Physical movement, productive work, and engagement with challenges often naturally regulate emotional states better than focusing directly on the emotions themselves. This is why the Stoic approach emphasizes doing rather than just feeling or thinking. However, this action orientation must be balanced with wisdom. Not all action is helpful, and impulsive action driven by strong emotions can sometimes make situations worse. The key is thoughtful, values-based action that addresses the root causes of problems rather than just their symptoms. The action over emotion principle also applies to helping others during their setbacks. Instead of just offering sympathy or trying to make someone feel better emotionally, the Stoic approach emphasizes providing practical help and encouraging constructive action. This often proves more valuable in the long run than emotional support alone. Epictetus taught his students to view emotions as temporary weather patterns in the mind, natural phenomena that arise and pass away without requiring dramatic responses. This perspective helps maintain emotional equilibrium, while focusing on the actions that can actually create positive change. The practical application involves developing what we might call action lists during setbacks. When facing any challenge, write down all the actions you could potentially take to address the situation. Then prioritize and begin implementing them systematically. This prevents emotional overwhelm while ensuring that you're making tangible progress toward solutions. This approach doesn't eliminate emotional processing, but provides a framework for processing emotions productively while making progress on practical solutions. Often, taking constructive action creates a positive feedback loop that naturally improves emotional states while also addressing the underlying causes of the setback. Chapter 8. Learning from Failure. The Stoic Approach to Wisdom Acquisition. The Stoics viewed failure not as the opposite of success, but as one of the most powerful sources of wisdom and growth available to human beings. This perspective transforms the entire experience of setbacks from something to be avoided or minimized into something to be mined for maximum learning value. Seneca wrote extensively about the educational value of adversity, arguing that smooth seas never made skilled sailors. He observed that people who experience early and frequent success often develop overconfidence and poor judgment because they haven't had opportunities to test their abilities against real challenges. Conversely, people who experience setbacks early in life often develop superior judgment and resilience because they've learned through direct experience what works and what doesn't. The key to learning from failure lies in systematic analysis rather than emotional reaction. When setbacks occur, most people either blame external circumstances or engage in destructive self-criticism. The Stoic approach involves objective examination of what happened, why it happened, and what can be learned for future situations. This analysis process involves several specific steps. First is accurate assessment of what actually happened versus what you thought would happen. Often, our expectations were based on incomplete information, overly optimistic assumptions, or failure to consider potential obstacles. Identifying these gaps improves future planning and decision-making. Second is identification of controllable factors that contributed to the setback. While external circumstances might have played a role, there are usually aspects of preparation, execution, or decision-making that could be improved. Focusing on these controllable factors provides actionable lessons for future situations. Third is recognition of what worked well even within the failed endeavor. Most setbacks aren't complete failures. They contain elements of success along with elements that didn't work. Identifying and preserving the successful elements prevents throwing away valuable progress along with the problematic aspects. Fourth is consideration of alternative approaches that might have led to better outcomes. This isn't about regret or self-blame, but about expanding your strategic toolkit for future challenges. Every failed approach eliminates one possibility while pointing toward others that might be more effective. The learning process also involves distinguishing between errors in execution and errors in judgment. Execution errors involve knowing what to do, but failing to do it properly. These typically require better systems, habits, or skills. Judgment errors involve making the wrong strategic decisions. These require better information gathering, analysis, or decision-making frameworks. This learning orientation also helps maintain motivation during difficult periods. When you view setbacks as tuition paid toward your education in life, they become investments rather than losses. The knowledge and skills gained through working through challenges often prove more valuable than whatever was lost in the original setback. The Stoic approach also emphasizes sharing lessons learned with others. Teaching others what you've learned through your failures helps consolidate your own understanding while contributing to the collective wisdom of your community. This transforms personal setbacks into sources of value for others facing similar challenges. Perhaps most importantly, the learning approach helps prevent repeated failures in similar situations. People who don't extract lessons from their setbacks often find themselves facing the same types of challenges repeatedly. Those who learn systematically from each setback gradually become more capable of handling increasingly complex challenges. Service and leadership. Advanced Stoic practice naturally leads toward service and leadership because virtue inherently involves contribution to the common good. The person who has developed significant Stoic character feels compelled to use their strength and wisdom to help others and improve their community. This service takes many forms depending on individual circumstances and talents. It might involve formal leadership roles, mentoring and teaching volunteer work, or simply being the kind of person others can rely on during difficult times. The key is that service flows naturally from virtue rather than being motivated by ego or external recognition. The Stoic leader leads primarily through example, demonstrating how to handle challenges with grace, how to make decisions based on principles rather than expediency, and how to maintain hope and energy even during difficult periods. This leadership often involves saying little while doing much, continuous learning and adaptation. Even advanced practitioners maintain beginner's mind, recognizing that every new experience provides opportunities for learning and growth. The mature Stoic doesn't assume they have mastered all challenges, but remains curious and open to new insights. This learning orientation prevents the arrogance that can develop from philosophical study and ensures that Stoic practice remains fresh and relevant rather than becoming rigid or dogmatic. The wise Stoic adapts their understanding and application of principles based on new experiences and insights. The commitment to continuous learning also involves studying not just ancient Stoic texts, but also modern developments in psychology, neuroscience, and other fields that can enhance understanding of human nature and effective responses to challenges. The ultimate goal of personal Stoic development is not personal benefit alone, but the creation of a more virtuous, resilient, and wise society. Each person who develops genuine Stoic character contributes to this larger transformation. Living without attachment to outcomes. The highest level of Stoic practice involves complete freedom from attachment to external outcomes, while maintaining full engagement with life's activities and relationships. This isn't indifference or withdrawal, but rather the ability to give your best effort to everything you do, while remaining equally accepting of whatever results emerge. This freedom from attachment paradoxically often leads to better external results because it eliminates the anxiety, desperation, and tunnel vision that attachment creates. When you're not desperately attached to specific outcomes, you often make better decisions, take appropriate risks, and remain flexible enough to capitalize on unexpected opportunities. Most importantly, this freedom provides consistent internal peace regardless of external circumstances. The person who has achieved this level of development experiences deep satisfaction and contentment that doesn't depend on external validation, material success, or even the approval of others. The transformation of adversity. The Stoic approach to turning setbacks into comebacks represents far more than a collection of coping strategies or motivational techniques. It constitutes a complete philosophy of life that transforms our relationship with adversity from something to be avoided into something to be embraced as essential for human flourishing. This transformation begins with a fundamental recognition that setbacks are not bugs in the system of life, but features, necessary components of any meaningful existence that provides opportunities for growth, learning, and character development that simply cannot be obtained any other way. The person who never faces challenges never develops the strength, wisdom, and resilience that become possible through working through difficulties. The Stoic framework provides practical tools for this transformation. The dichotomy of control helps us focus our energy where it can be most effective. Reframing techniques help us extract maximum value from difficult experiences. The discipline of desire helps us hold our preferences lightly while remaining fully engaged. Present moment awareness helps us take constructive action rather than becoming lost in regret or anxiety. But beyond these individual techniques lies a more profound transformation of identity and purpose. The person who adopts Stoic principles gradually shifts from seeing themselves as a victim of circumstances to seeing themselves as an active agent capable of creating meaning and value regardless of external conditions. This shift in identity provides the foundation for resilience that goes far beyond any specific technique or strategy. The Stoic approach also recognizes that individual resilience exists within larger contexts of community and relationship. We develop strength partly through our connections with others, and we use our strength partly in service to others. The person who successfully applies Stoic principles to their own setbacks often becomes a source of wisdom and support for others facing similar challenges. Perhaps most importantly, the Stoic approach provides a sense of meaning and purpose that transcends immediate circumstances. When your primary goal is the development of virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, then every situation becomes an opportunity for progress toward that goal. Setbacks cannot defeat you because they cannot prevent you from becoming more virtuous. They can only provide you with new opportunities to practice virtue under challenging circumstances. This perspective transforms not just how we handle setbacks, but how we approach life as a whole. Instead of trying to create lives free from difficulty, we learn to create lives rich with meaning, connection, and growth.